Hi all, welcome back to the Congressional App Challenge Debugged Podcast. I'm your host Medha, and today our guest is Michaela De Guzman. Michaela is a senior curriculum developer at Girls Who Code and a CSTA Equity Fellow Alumni from 2023 to 2024. She began her career teaching coding in K through 6 in Title I schools for 2 years, where she fell in love with computer science education. Ever since then, she has remained committed to students feeling empowered through problem solving and expressing themselves through code. In her time at Girls Who Code, she has co-developed cybersecurity and data science courses focused on social justice, along with activities around creative computing and machine learning. Michaela, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. Very excited to be here as well.
Very excited to have you. And with me on this episode, Thushar, one of our Congressional App Challenge Debugged Podcast members, will be co-hosting. Thushar, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so getting started here, Michaela, your journey into the tech world is inspiring. So we would like to know what first drew you to technology, and how did your interest in high school or college shape your path to becoming a CSTA Equity Fellow and Woman in Tech advocate?
That's such a great question. Let me think about where to start. So for as long as I can remember, I loved video games. So my dad introduced me and my siblings early on. He was a gamer through the Nintendo 64. And this was like a very key way of me and my 3 siblings, so there was 4 of us, to bond together. There was a lot of laughing, of course, a lot of yelling, but a lot of like memorable like memories over video games, and that's kind of still how we connect today. So it kind of started, my interest in tech kind of started there, and then in high school I became interested in games and animation as a way to tell stories, which helped me get through some tough times in middle and high school. And so kind of fast forwarding into college, I wanted to get into games, and I ended up taking computer science classes, which I had a very love-hate relationship for. I loved creating things and solving puzzles and the assignments I was assigned, but just the practice of failing and debugging wasn't something I was very used to. So every bug or mistake I came across, it felt like a reason I didn't belong in computer science, unfortunately. But of course, now I know that is just very normal, part of computer science, of problem solving. And so computer science is sort of something I always wished I had been introduced to earlier, so I could have had a mindset to pursue it more confidently. And not to say it's like too late for me, because I'm also still learning each day. I like to code. I still have sort of like an art practice with technology. And I think for me, what really inspires me is like reflecting on my own experiences and thinking about how I have an opportunity to give students time to learn the tools and have the mindset to pursue computer science, kind of no matter their background or their experience or when they first encounter it.
That is such an incredible story. And as someone who loves to play games and also argue with my brother, I totally relate to that. Building a game with my brother is actually how I first got into coding as well. So really cool that's a story that is common. I would love to understand a little bit more about some of your initiatives at Girls Who Code. Why is it that you've prioritized programs and initiatives like computer science education? Could you talk a little bit more about, what got you started specifically in that field?
Yeah, so as I said, like I am inspired by sort of my own experiences in computer science as being a woman of color in tech. And just kind of feeling alone in that environment of being a little afraid to ask questions because I wasn't sure how I was going to be perceived. And also just I wish that I was introduced to coding at a much younger age. And so when I had the opportunity to actually volunteer and teach coding to elementary schoolers, that was actually very inspiring to me because I was able to teach these little kids like how to code, and because they grew up with technology of iPads or digital devices in their hands, they were just able to create such cool, innovative things that I feel like I would have never been able to think of. And so for me, I kind of have my career based in equity of just really wanting to have students have the opportunity to sort of pursue computer science, because computer science, as of right now, I think when a lot of people hear it for the first time, it sounds very scary. People don't know what it was. I even have a hard time explaining computer science to my friends and my family. But I think it's important, especially in this day and age where technology is all around us, that it's not, well, it's a little bit of a scary thing, but it is definitely something that everyone can understand and should understand in our daily life now.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. And computer science, as you just mentioned, is definitely a big part of everyone's lives, no matter if someone's involved in technology or in a completely different field, such as medicine. So is there anything
Exactly.
that like excites you about the future of technology and its intersection with education and how students can prepare themselves for emerging trends in technology?
Yeah, so I think computer science, I think the really cool thing about computer science is it really can be like intertwined with pretty much any field. Like computer science is everywhere with, it doesn't have to just be in like biology, chemistry, and like STEM related stuff, but I intertwine it with art. And I think sort of as we keep pushing like computer science out of its little box into what does that look like when it intersects with fashion? What does it look like when it intersects with like biology or whatever interest that you might have? We kind of like find different things or innovate on things that we didn't think were possible. And I guess like some advice for students on how to prepare themselves for emerging trends in tech is just experimenting with the different tools that are coming out there. Like if you're curious about it, there's no point in just waiting if like for a class to introduce it or for someone to teach you how to do it. It takes a lot of bravery and it is going to be a little scary, but it's important to just try and dive in and see what you can do with that tool. Because especially as, say, like experts or myself are figuring out what we can do with these tools, you yourself, the student, no matter what age you are, can figure out how that tool can work best for you and find out how it might be useful for your own community.
That's such a great tactic. I think it's super important for students to take initiative on things that are important to them, because it's probably important to other people. Can you talk about some of the programs and initiatives within Girls Who Code and other initiatives that you've been a part of that you think have been really impactful and you've seen impact? And can you give some examples of what that impact looks like?
Yeah, of course. So with Girls Who Code specifically, we work a lot. I work a lot on the summer program. So we have two different summer programs, which is Summer Immersion Program and then the Self-Paced Program. Both are for high school students that identify as girls or non-binary students. And so when students sort of enter this space, it is like a little different from a typical classroom because one, it's of course in the summertime, it is virtual, but it also provides a lot of opportunities to connect with other female students or non-binary students. And something that we really focus on in all Girls Who Code programs across the board is what we call sisterhood. And this is community. And of course, it's not a secret that there is a gender gap in technology. And our whole sort of mission of Girls Who Code is to motivate and inspire our technologists, our students, to pursue tech. And I think a lot of that just has to come from having like a sisterhood or community to help back you up and help support you in any other way. Because when you are a woman in tech, at least in my experience, it's very scary to be there and be a little lonely because there's not familiar faces around you. And then also, I don't know, there's something about like having to ask a question or asking to help and thinking about how you might be perceived. And so really across all these programs, we are trying to first, of course, introduce computer science to our students of first, what is computer science? What does it look like in cybersecurity and data science across different other fields? And then also a huge sort of central theme is just that sisterhood initiative of how does it feel like to support each other when in coding, a lot of times there's this image of a coder in a room alone, but we really want you all or everyone to collaborate and support each other. And of course, there is a lot of failure, I would say, in computer science of making mistakes and trying again and again, and that can be very scary to ask our students to do. So definitely having that community of being inspired by them, motivated by them, and being able to talk about and have advice from each other definitely goes a long way and makes our students feel less alone and can empower them to keep taking action or keep on going.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. I mean, as someone in computer science, there's definitely times where you can feel very low and you don't know the next steps, especially when you're partaking or taking on like huge challenges, and you might need a different perspective on the challenge you're taking on. So collaboration is definitely key in computer science. So kind of going on to these big ideas, did you have any suggestions on how like young students can take their ideas that they've had from a young age and kind of turn them into impactful tech solutions that have been shown throughout the Congressional App Challenge with innovative apps that kind of have gone a long way for the last couple of years?
Yeah, definitely a lot of our Girls Who Code tenants kind of intertwine with social justice and activism, and something that our founder says all the time, Reshma, is brave, not perfect. And it is definitely words that we live by and we want our students to live by. So, for example, I know when I design projects, sometimes I do art, sometimes it's coding. It might be, I don't know, a new knitting project. It can be a little scary to take the first few steps. You might have it all in your head, you might have it all planned out, but to actually start creating and sitting down and, typing at your computer, coding, creating the actual thing, it can be a little scary because you kind of know it's not going to be perfect the first try. If it was, that's pretty miraculous. But you have to be able to just sit down and get started, because once you get started, you kind of have a better idea of where you want the app to go. You are kind of learning along the way. You're thinking about what else you can add to it, what is working, what is not working, because sometimes our ideas on paper seem like the greatest idea ever, but once you put into practice, it totally doesn't work. So living by brave, not perfect really helps, at least me and our students, that once we take those first steps and we accept that it's not going to be perfect, but there's definitely the beginnings of room for improvement, and we can actually start to see it take form, I think is just so important, and definitely something that I have had to learn kind of when I was in middle school, high school.
Thank you so much for sharing. Can you talk about some advice you have for middle school and high school students that are interested in computer science but feel intimidated? I know you talked about it a little bit, but I'd love to hear your take on advice, as well as specifically more about mentorship and how you view that as being critical.
Yeah, I think mentorship is so important just because, again, it's a lot about building community and having a actual connection with a person that you can talk to is definitely helpful, and they can provide you new perspectives, new advice on what you might be able to do, what you might be potentially interested in. So actually, a mentor early in my life, it was my older cousin who pursued computer science in college. She was around 5 years older than me, and I had no idea what computer science was, never heard of it. But because she kept talking to me about it and was telling me that this might be something I'm interested in, that sort of gave me the push to like actually take a computer science class during my first year of college. And I think it's safe to say that if I didn't know what coding was or if she didn't mention it to me, I definitely would not probably be even in this role or know exactly what computer science was. And I definitely encourage students to seek out people in their lives, such as teachers, siblings, relatives, and think about what you want to learn more about. Or even start asking them questions because you don't ever really know what you're going to learn about. I think people always have like such interesting lives. They have like certain journeys of how they got there, and maybe it's not going to be directly related to your journey. Maybe you're not going to be, say, a teacher or whatever job your parents are or your siblings are. But I feel like there are definitely always stories to take away from people. And I think it's even more powerful that when you hear it from someone you actually know, or maybe even someone that looks like you can think about how that might relate to your life. Or, for example, if I hear something of a mentor of mine has done, I feel a lot less alone. And I know that the feelings that I have are very normal, and I can go to advice or get some advice from that person.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And like for computer science, I'm thinking of how to phrase this here. Like, as like you knew that you wanted to pursue computer science, but then when did it cross your mind that you wanted to apply that into the teaching field and become a role model yourself for the younger generation, and help them grow up to become as influential as you are?
Oh, thank you so much for that last part. But yeah, I think I actually did not know until like pretty late, until probably a little bit after I graduated college. So I very much was still, well, I still am interested in creative endeavors and I am able to do it in my free time. But a little bit after college, I did some camp counseling for a tech job or a tech camp. And then afterwards, I decided I wanted to try giving back to the community by teaching computer science to elementary schoolers. And I kind of thought I was going to do this for like 1 year or 2 years. And I ended up just sort of like falling in love with it because computer science education spoke to so many things that I held dear of just like, I think with computer science, you learn a lot of problem solving. You learn a lot about trying again, making mistakes, normalizing failure. It's a lot about breaking things down and taking things piece by piece, which I think are just all necessary skills that are helpful no matter what field you are in. And it really, really spoke to me, especially thinking about my own educational experiences. I think I've talked a little bit about, I think in high school, I was like very paralyzed by a lot of things of like wanting to do the right thing all the time or wanting to be perfect. And I think computer science kind of forces you into a different mindset of it's not going to be perfect the first time and you're going to keep trying and trying again and improve on it. And then if something feels like a little overwhelming, there's a chance, like there's an opportunity to take that thing and then break it into smaller pieces and make it a lot more manageable, which are, key things to computer science. And I think for me, I just found so much value in like what sort of skills like transfer from computer science education that I wish I had as I don't know, a middle schooler, a high schooler, a young adult, even as I'm practicing right now that I can take into my own life, that I think anyone could really benefit from.
Thank you so much. Your story is so inspiring and so wholesome as well, because it shows, it's a testament to how important education is, and how it's been so fruitful in your life. And it's so nice to hear you're paying it forward. I think people will really benefit from it. I think the last question for me is, what resources do you recommend to people that are interested in computer science, or people that know about computer science but just want to take the next step? Any resources or organizations that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Girls Who Code. So if there's a Girls Who Code club, you should definitely check us out. Definitely a great community. If you are a woman or a non-binary student, check out our summer programs. But I think also a really cool thing about this day and age is there are so many free resources online, of definitely there's Scratch. If there's a programming language that you're interested in, such as Python or Java or JavaScript, you can usually just Google it or put it into YouTube and find a beginner's video on it. And if you don't even know where to start, there's a lot of beginner guides on if you're interested in sort of like making a website, what languages should you learn. If you're interested in AI, this is what you should learn. But yeah, I think just like with this day and age, there's just so many free resources out there that you can Google it, and it's very low stakes. You can try it out, see if you like it. And if that's not your cup of tea, maybe try another computer science related thing, because there's just so many possibilities out there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Michaela, and Tushar, thank you so much for co-hosting this podcast. Michaela, we've learned so much from you, and I think that it will be so helpful for our listeners to be able to understand a little bit more about what it is you do, what your story looks like, and how they can follow in your footsteps or use the resources of Girls Who Code and other great organizations like it.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I had such a great time.
Appreciate it. All right. To our listeners, bye all. We'll see you next week.